Imagine this. You're floating in zero gravity, looking down at the beautiful blue marble we call Earth. You've got your helmet on, your spacesuit is pressurized, and tucked into your survival kit is a giant machete. Wait, what? A machete? In space? It sounds like the plot of a B-list sci-fi movie, but for Soviet cosmonauts, this was a very real and very necessary piece of equipment. You're probably thinking, were they expecting to fight aliens? The real reason is much stranger, and it has everything to do with what might happen not in the vast emptiness of space, but right back here on Earth. So, why on Earth, literally, would a space explorer need a weapon designed for the jungle? To understand this, we need to travel back to the height of the space race, specifically to March 18, 1965. Cosmonaut Alexei Leonov is about to make history. He's floating outside his Voskhod 2 spacecraft, becoming the very first human to perform a spacewalk. It's a triumphant moment for the Soviet Union and for all of humanity. The images are breathtaking, a lone figure suspended against the blackness of space. But as we all know, what goes up must come down, and for Leonov and his crewmate, Pavel Belyayev, the coming down part was where the real trouble began. Their re-entry did not go as planned, not even close. A malfunction in the automatic guidance system forced them to take manual control. This was a high-stress, high-stakes maneuver they had never practiced in a real-world scenario. They ended up overshooting their intended landing zone by hundreds of miles. So, where did they land? Not on the flat open steppes of Kazakhstan as planned. Instead, their capsule slammed down in the middle of the Ural Mountains, deep within the Siberian taiga. This is a place often called Siberia's Dark Forest, and for good reason. It's a vast, remote wilderness covered in deep snow and absolutely teeming with wildlife. When Leonov and Belyayev opened the hatch of their capsule, they weren't greeted by a welcoming committee. They were greeted by the bone-chilling cold and the unnerving silence of a forest where bears and wolves were the top of the food chain. They were completely isolated, hundreds of miles from the nearest human settlement. Their radio couldn't get a signal through the dense trees. They were stranded. Rescue crews knew they were somewhere in the region, but finding a small capsule in a forest larger than most European countries was like finding a needle in a haystack. They spent 2 nights in the freezing wilderness, huddled inside their small capsule for warmth, listening to the sounds of the forest around them. They could hear wolves howling, and they knew that the smell of their landing would attract curious and potentially hungry predators. They had a standard-issue pistol, but they quickly realized that against a large, determined Siberian bear, a pistol might just make it angry. They were astronauts, trained for the rigors of space, not for surviving a standoff with a 1,000-pound carnivore in a frozen forest. This terrifying experience became a crucial lesson for the Soviet space program. They had prepared their cosmonauts for the dangers of space, but they had neglected the dangers of their own planet. This is where our story comes full circle, back to the astronaut's weapon. After Leonov and Belyayev's harrowing ordeal, the Soviet Space Agency knew they had to create a better survival kit. They needed something more versatile and powerful than a simple pistol. So they developed the TP-82, a truly unique piece of hardware. It looked like something out of a spy movie. It was a 3-barreled firearm. 2 of the barrels were shotgun barrels, designed for hunting small game for food and for firing flares to signal for help. But the 3rd lower barrel was the real game changer. It was a rifle barrel, capable of firing powerful rounds that could, in theory, take down a large animal like a bear. But that's not all. The gun's detachable stock was not just a stock. It was also a massive, razor-sharp machete. So now our cosmonaut has a shotgun, a rifle, and a heavy-duty blade, all in one compact package. This wasn't for fighting aliens. It was for chopping firewood, building a shelter, defending against wolves, and giving them a fighting chance if they came face-to-face with a Siberian brown bear. This weapon, officially named the Special Portable Emergency Stock, became standard issue on all Soyuz missions from 1986, all the way up until 2006. That's right. For 20 years, Every single person launched into space on a Soyuz rocket, including American astronauts flying to Mir and the International Space Station, had this survival gun machete combo stowed away in their capsule. Imagine being an American astronaut training for a mission to the ISS. You're learning orbital mechanics, practicing spacewalks in a giant pool, and then you get taken to a firing range to practice shooting a triple-barreled Russian space gun. Just in case you land in Siberia and have to fight a bear. It's a wild thought, but it was a very real part of astronaut training. The gun was designed to be user-friendly even for someone who wasn't a firearms expert. It was a tool, first and foremost, for survival. So what happened to the TP-82? Why don't astronauts carry it anymore? Well, a couple of things changed. First, landing systems became incredibly precise. The days of overshooting a landing zone by hundreds of miles were largely over. Modern Soyuz capsules can land within a few miles, or even closer, to their target, where recovery teams are waiting. The chances of a cosmonaut having to spend a night in the wilderness became vanishingly small. Secondly, the specialized ammunition for the TP-82 began to degrade over time, and production stopped. It became unreliable. So in 2007, the decision was made to retire the trusty space gun. Today, cosmonauts and astronauts still have a survival kit, but it contains a standard semi-automatic pistol. It's still there for self-defense and hunting small game if the absolute worst-case scenario happens. But the legendary 3-barreled machete gun is now a museum piece. It's a fascinating relic from an era when space travel was still a wild frontier, where the dangers weren't just in the stars above, but also in the untamed wilderness below. The story of the astronaut's sword isn't about fighting in space. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the most dangerous part of a journey into the unknown is the journey home. It shows us that for all our technological prowess, we are still at the mercy of the raw, untamed power of our own planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of the strangest and coolest bits of space history. If you found this as fascinating as I did, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you want more stories about the hidden side of science and exploration, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you in the next video.